Well, as is always the case on this first Sunday after the celebration of Christmas, the celebration of the birth of Christ, we acknowledge the situation into which he was born. The Holy Family of Mary, his mother, his earthly father Joseph, and to contemplate what that means as we behold, as we stand in reverence and awe of this most sacred of all families. And of course, there's lots that can be said about the sacredness of the human family in the first place. That this was the situation, that this was the context through which the Creator of all things entered into his creation in the family unit, and with two parents who then were charged with providing for, nurturing, protecting, and bringing him up. I think it's also important for us, especially in this year A cycle of the gospel for today, which focuses on St. Joseph fleeing to Egypt, protecting the child from the forces that were trying to destroy him. It's good for us to focus on just how vulnerable God allowed himself to be in all of this. God, who is all-powerful, infinitely powerful, when he came into this world, he was not robed with all of his divine majesty. He came into the world exactly how all of us did, as an infant entirely dependent on his parents, not only for nourishment, not only for upbringing, but for protection itself. It's pleasing to God to work with his creation. He could have done it another way. He could have simply come down with everything he needed to start his mission and then go. But instead he did so requiring the protection especially of St. Joseph, who does this, as we hear, faithfully and wonderfully. And keep in mind, the celebration of Christmas for us now is an acknowledgement that Christ, that the Messiah, the Son of God, has already come. And in fact, what he wants more than anything else is to enter into each and every one of us, to enter into our lives, in a sense, to be born into us, so that we too can experience the fullness of that relationship with him. And he comes to us in the same way he came into this world. Not with all of his overriding power, but completely respecting our free will, our ability to cooperate with God's grace, to choose to accept his invitation or to reject it. And if we do accept it, if we do allow Christ into our hearts, into our lives, such that we call ourselves his followers, then just as at the very beginning, he is vulnerable there. He allows himself to be vulnerable there so that we can cooperate with his grace, for that presence within us to be protected and to grow. And just like in the beginning of his earthly life, there are forces out there that will seek to destroy him, to separate us from him, to remove us from that presence. First, I want to acknowledge that as Catholics, this is important, I think, that we are not materialists. We do not believe that this world is all there is, that this physical world is all there is. We do believe in our faith, and we do acknowledge spiritual realities. The angels of God who were created to be his messengers, who were created for the choirs of heaven, and yet a third of them fell from that, choosing instead the rebellion of the evil one, making it their mission then, along with him, to turn as many away from the Creator as possible, to join them in their eternal death of separation from him. We do believe that. It's part of the reason to acknowledge that we pray the prayer to St. Michael at the end of every Mass here. There are spiritual realities that seek to separate us from the one who created us. And we're on guard against the temptations and the things that they do to nudge us away, to destroy the child within us, the Christ child who seeks only to grow. But it's not that every time we sin, every time we turn away from him, we can blame it on evil forces and spiritual realities. There is also a part that we play in this. Our own, what we call concupiscence, our own tendency to move away from God, to be more comfortable with the things of this world, to seek pleasure or our own enrichment first, or simply to become so busy and distracted that we forget what truly matters. And so we have to protect the presence of Christ within us from that, from our own indifference at times or our own inability to faithfully give ourselves to him. And then finally, of course, our culture. Now, of course, the culture kind of goes in cycles. Sometimes it's closer to the way that, especially here in the West, it's closer to Christ. Sometimes it's much further. We seem to be in a post-Christian culture now, such that we can no longer rely on the culture to support what it is that we do here. In fact, far more likely to be actively opposed to what we do here. And so we too, just like the Holy Family, experience the forces out there that are trying to stop the mission of the Christ. And yet we know that he is far more powerful than anything that might oppose him. It's not that he requires us to protect him because he can't do it himself. It's because he chose to allow himself to be vulnerable for us so that we could choose him. What is it that we do to protect him? What is it we do to be on guard against all these things? Everything he gave us in this church. His word, which enriches our minds, which reminds us of what we are called to, the sacraments, especially the sacrament of the Eucharist and of reconciliation, which continue to heal us when we fail, to pick us back up and keep moving us forward and to nourish us until the end. In cooperating with those things, we really have nothing to fear, because no earthly power, no evil power, nothing that opposes him can come close to separating us from him. Only we can allow that to happen by our own will. And may it be that we never choose that. May it be we are constantly recommitted to accepting Christ into our lives and to protecting his presence there, such that it can grow and come to fruition and bring us to where all of us desire to be, with him and the Holy Family for eternity.